Hi guys, I'm Brad Montgomery and welcome to The Breakdown. And here we talk about science, psychology, and investing. Today we're going to be talking about short-term and long-term rentals, the benefits of each. Before we get started, if you missed any of our episodes, you can always go to keyfoxtv.com/the-breakdown. Now let's break it down. And I'm here with Adrienne Dominguez. We brought you back here with AMAR Real Estate Group, and we're going to be talking about short-term and long-term rentals. Obviously, a fun subject that we've talked a lot about, and there's a lot to learn in this area actually. And there's going to be a lot to learn on both sides of this. A lot of people say, you've got team one short-term rentals, you've got other team long-term rentals, and there's actually benefits and drawbacks to each, really. Right. So. And we're going to get into that. First of all, let's define for those out there that don't know, what is a short-term rental?
So a short-term rental, real easy. It's short timing, right? How long you stay in the property is really short, at least 30 days or less in a property.
Okay. Yeah, really easy. I wish really easy to manage and maintain. But that can be made easier, and we'll get into some of that down the road. Okay, so there's different ways to kind of take care of it. I'll give you an example. I know somebody that they have one. It was kind of like a mother-in-law's quarters out back, and they were Airbnb-ing it, but they were kind of handling a lot of the cleaning themselves. So when they would go out there in the backyard and go in there and take care of it, clean it all up, fix it all up, get it ready, and it wasn't really that big of a deal. There's some other people where if it's not attached to the yard or in the yard itself on the property, then you may want a company that can come in and kind of handle it for you. I didn't realize people went that far. I should have known. I had a real estate agent tell me, I had considered doing one, and she was telling me, I handle a lot. I'll go and I'll clean it up for you, and they take a fee or whatever. How does that work, and how much of a fee do they usually try to take?
So there's a lot of different companies out there. Some are, kind of more off the books kind of a thing, but more generally, those management companies would charge you anywhere from 15 to 40% of the total rentals, not your profits, but the rentals itself, what you actually collect gross off the top. So that's where you have to be really careful about who you hire, because that can get real costly, even when you're passing on some of the costs, the cleaning costs, for instance, to the short-term renter. And
if it's off the books, come tax write-off time,
you also can't deduct that.
Right, that gets a little trickier as well. So, and that's interesting. Now, what are I know there's Airbnb. What are some of these other, are these like the hosting company, the listing companies, I guess, is that what you call them, where you can list your rental? And what are some of the companies that do that?
The most popular, obviously, is Airbnb. We see VRBO for single-family homes. Sites like that in the area. A lot of it you'll see on Facebook Marketplace, even, where you'll see some short-term rentals in that area, in that respect too. But majority, definitely Airbnb. Why? Because it's a lot of the casitas. It's a lot of the, I'm renting one room, and Airbnbs allow that. VRBOs have to be a standalone property.
Okay. And so let's say if you're just doing a standalone property, which some people are, is there, I don't know, some benefits over Airbnb versus Vrbo or Facebook Marketplace, or what are you seeing, like kind of the leader right now?
Still Airbnb in our area. You're right now, I just checked before I got here, more than 1,000 listings available for rent in the next 5-month period. So that's the majority are going there. And as far as benefits, just the name recognition, it's kind of like with real estate, when you're searching for a home to buy, everyone thinks Zillow, right? And, then they'll think of realtor.com and homes.com after that. True. But Airbnb is your Zillow in this space.
Yeah, and Zillow did a really smart thing by getting involved in the realty space. We'll talk about that later. But so also too, I want to talk about essentially, we're going to go into how to choose a home maybe. But before we get to that, how do you, if you're just doing this, like what all goes into running it and taking care of it?
In the short-term market, it's kind of like running a hotel, right? You have to think about, obviously, your lodging. What does a typical person need when they're lodging, on a short-term basis? Some people like to stock things.
Heard about that?
Coffee, toilet paper, all of those fixings. You need to have it furnished for the most part. Most of these Airbnbs are furnished. You have to have sheets. You have to have a cleaning staff. You have to have supplies for cleaning. You have to pay for utilities and offer internet.
Write-off, right? Some of that stuff can.
A lot of it is a write-off, especially on the short-term rental for sure. Things that are not typical write-offs are your property taxes necessarily, because that's just a normal income. A normal expense, I should say, of the business. But the interest on your mortgage, you can definitely write off that way too. And
so you mentioned everything. So it basically needs to be like a hotel room. So when somebody walks in, they need to have everything at hand. I mean, everything's got to be, it's not just in working order, but maybe some of the extras, like you said, some chips, maybe
beyond a hotel room, right? You need like cooking utensils, pots, pans, things that, someone wants to make themselves at home with.
And let me ask you, because this is something I've always wondered, and it actually just came to the forefront. Are you trying to get kind of like repeat business as well? So can you like, if you've got someone that travels to El Paso, once a year for a conference or whatever, twice a year for business meetings, if they really like their stay, is there a tendency for someone to want to go, like a hotel, like, oh, I want to go back to that house. I want to try to stay in that house. Do you see that, or is that not really a thing?
It is a thing. Okay. You see that more in vacation destinations, like Ruidoso, for instance. If someone's like, I love this cabin. I love my experience there. I want to go back there. El Paso is more of your commuter, one time, maybe for a convention that's occasionally here, kind of a thing. And then there's also really what you see is like families of 4+ soldiers who come into town to come visit. They might particularly like one location, one spot more than the others. They might be the repeat customers.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so and now if you're looking at, because it's a little bit different, I think it's probably a little easier. What are some of the ways you go about trying to find one for purchase? Like, what would you recommend? Like, okay, you know what, I want to do this. How do I find one?
Okay, so the big thing is about cash flow, right? You have to be looking at what kind of profits you're going to be bringing in, and it needs to make sure that you're not overpaying for the property so that your monthly payment on said mortgage for the property doesn't supersede all of the expenses.
So you're just working for the bank at that point.
Exactly. Not for yourself. Right. You're gaining equity technically through them, but that's a lot of sweat equity in there too. So you typically, my suggestion is looking at assumable loans. VA, typically, you see a lot of VA sellers out there who just need to sell. They're offering their low interest rate from way back when, their 3%, their 4%. If you can get into that, but the caveat with that is that you now need to make up the difference in the down payment and equity between what they purchased it at and today's market value. So you'll probably need some more skin in the game in that sense. But you're not overpaying for the property. You're getting it with a lower interest rate. There's one, and it keeps the monthly payment down.
Right.
The other is I suggest looking for fixer-uppers, homes that are not ready to hit the market right away right now. But with a little TLC, a little love, you can actually make it hit the market for the rental. The worst thing you can do is find something, it's move-in ready, it's beautiful, but now your mortgage is going to be $300-400 more expensive than what you can actually
rent. So either you won't see any profit or you'll come in under. And that's. So, and we were talking about that. Are there, fixer-uppers, when the market got so tight, people were grabbing fixer-uppers all of a sudden, like regular families were, not just investors. So the investor market really shrank. And we had talked, I guess, 6 months ago or so, and it hasn't come back to what it was, the investor market. So are the investor types still harder to find?
Yes, but they're not going to be on Zillow, right? Those properties are not on Zillow. Okay. They're not on the market with a realtor typically.
It used to be, you could occasionally find them before the pandemic. I found one that was really good on Zillow.
Yeah.
But now, no.
Now it's a lot of word of mouth. It's off-market properties, you're talking to friends and family who might be coming into an inherited property, things like that you'll find those potential opportunities.
So it has to fall out of the sky now. No, I'm joking. It's not quite
or
that.
you
It's
have a
not
really
that
good
bad.
realtor who has good contacts with some wholesalers, and
There you go.
shameless plug.
And actually, that's very true. I noticed because before the pandemic, and actually, honestly, I feel like you pretty much nailed it. Before the pandemic, I had a realtor, and we were working for investment properties, and he led me to 2 of them. And he was really good, but I was also doing my own research, and I go to Starbucks and whatever. Well, then after we parted ways, which can happen with realtors, but we did, but we worked really well together. So then I was on my own. I did a lot of what I was already doing when I was with him. And I actually found one. I had found one on Zillow. And in fact, I was surprised it was there. And I ended up moving on it. And when it came time to rent it out, I was actually looking for a property manager. And it's funny because this guy, I guess he'd been watching it too. And so he came and he's walking through and, he was telling me what he charges for percentage wise and everything to manage it. And he was like, yeah, I saw this one too. He was mad that he didn't move on it. But I guess, again, times have changed. So now it really is not so much, you can't just sit on the internet. You really, family, friends, know a realtor, someone that can get you the kind of behind the scenes.
And honestly, I do think sellers have become a lot more informed. They know that they can get more for their property than ever before. So they're not really willing to
Cut you a deal.
Yeah,
so I could see that. Okay. So, and that kind of goes the same way with longer term rentals as far as finding it, but we're going to go into that in a second. So basically you just it can't be too pretty right up front because yes, it's a lot less work for you to do, but you're not going to make profit, right? Or worse yet, you're going to come in under. Now, one thing I want to talk about really quickly to go back to, as you were listing all those, you had mentioned the money down, like for example, the VA loan. And I think this is something that a lot of investors have realized now. It's not the old days of 5%, 3%, 5.5%. So which are down, or actually it would have been 20% down or 15% down. Okay, not the rate, but the amount that you have to move in when you have to give the bank for them to go in on the loan with you. It was 20%. It got lowered to 15%. Okay, now just take that. Without going where we are now, 15, 20%, likely you wouldn't make cash flow because if you do the quick and dirty 1% rule, if you've got a home that's $180,000, right? 1% rule will tell you need to rent that for $1,800 a month to make rent.
Those days are gone.
Yeah, and rent right now it's gone up, but it's not $1,800 for $180,000 home. It's about $1,400.
In fact, the median rental right now is going between $1,550 and $1,600 a month.
Okay.
But your median sale price in El Paso is at $260.
Right. See, there you go.
So
now instead of it being, it doesn't work anymore. So I think you want to put and I think mandatory, they raised it now because they want to kind of trim back the investing market a little bit just to keep things stable. So what does it have to go in 25%?
There are some, for instance, if you don't declare all your income, you're self-employed. For instance, there's a 25% type loan out there where they're just looking at the gross income that comes in, not what you report necessarily to the IRS on your tax returns. So that's a really good one for investors that, don't declare everything, all the income that they make. In that sense, or they have a lot of deductions, I should say.
Okay.
There's that one, but generally you can still do a 20% down loan overall. You're just not going to get the desirable interest rate that you would with an owner-occupant type of loan.
Right, exactly, the 5% or the, so now and I was going to ask you this too, because I was thinking, okay, so it's not going to work going in, right? You're not going to make cash flow. You're not going to cash. So what are some investors like going 50% down, even though the bank wouldn't require it? Are they saying, okay, the home's 180, so I'm going to go half in. So that way the loan monthly the payment's going to be lower. And then that way I can still cash flow. Are you seeing some of that? Or?
I don't see that actually.
Really?
Still people are conscious about, making sure that they're not too much of their liquid is in the property.
They're looking more at the equity.
Yeah.
Really. Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Correct.
That's interesting. And we'll get more into that too with the long-term rental. Okay. So that's basically, so that when you're looking for one, Just like she said, not too pretty out front. You just want one that maybe is a little bit of a fixer-upper because that's going to save you when it comes to the bank note and also the monthly mortgages, which will allow you to cash flow a little bit more. I will say this, short-term rentals, what are they averaging a month? Just like your average?
Your average nightly rate is about 100 and 150. I want to say right now, the highest I've seen, and this is the fall market, right? Or the winter market. When you get around the holidays kind of a thing, it obviously shoots up, but about 850 to 900 for a single night, right? And those are your high end, beautiful
Bougie.
homes.
Yeah.
But my rule of thumb too is making sure that, if you take, let's say you rented out 20 nights, make sure that nightly rental rate covers your expenses plus 20%, right?
So kind of calculate it backwards, bake it in to what you're charging to make sure everything's covered.
And then make sure the market actually supports it. If it doesn't support it in that neighborhood, then I would look elsewhere.
So that's basically what you do for like long-term rent in a different way. That's how you do it for short-term. Make sure you can charge. So you're looking at blocking out 20 nights of the month. So you give yourself some leeway for vacancy.
Correct.
And then you want to shoot 20% over on that nightly rate to make sure you make all your monthly expenses.
And profit too. You want to make sure that you make the expenses plus 20%.
Plus, okay, I like that. Interesting. And if the market can't support it on that home, you got to move on.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. So we went over the companies that manage them. Now we've seen their popularity has exploded, right? It exploded a few years ago.
2020, it was a lot of change for everyone.
It was, and then it exploded even more. I think some of that was because house prices went up and Airbnb was a way to still make an investment property go, right? Mm-hmm. So we saw some laws change, right? Were there any laws enacted in El Paso or not yet? Because I know in other parts of the country, I think I saw there was something where there could be so many in a neighborhood or something like that, or?
Correct.
Okay.
So there's two parts to this, right? So what you want to be on the lookout for, right now, El Paso hasn't done anything. There was a lot of talk last year, last year specifically, about and the city council actually reviewed it. What they ended up doing was just creating a hotline where people can submit complaints about short-term rentals and what was going on there, right? But no actual ordinance changes, no hotel occupancy tax changes here locally. For those who do have short-term rentals, they still have to pay the state hotel occupancy tax of 6%. Mm-hmm. But typically Airbnb, VRBO, they'll calculate that for you into everything and send the payment for you.
Nice. Okay.
So cool. They send it on their own. So, but noise ordinances and nuisance ordinances are the ones that you want to be on the lookout for with short-term rentals. So there's quiet hours, right? 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. So you restrict parties. I mean, that's a big problem that we've heard is a lot of parties happen. The way short-term renters or landlords can avoid that is putting a 2-night minimum on their short-term rental stays instead of a 1 night. Because typically if it's a 1 night, someone's just there to have a 1 night fun.
Right. Exactly.
So
keep the 20-year-olds out with the 2 night.
Well, so there's responsible. I don't want to say there's any bad generations. There's people my age that have a good time too.
That's very true. We can get a little carried away at times. That's a very good point.
So, there's that. There's, your typical trash ordinances and recycling ordinances that can sometimes be avoided when there's a short-term rental. People don't dispose of their stuff the right way, things like that.
Yeah, they don't care.
Yeah. The other big thing too is Texas is really pro-landlord in that they don't want to restrict short-term rentals because it could affect long-term rentals. And there was a bunch of court cases between HOAs and them trying to restrict owners of condos and things like that from being able to do short-term rentals and even long-term rentals. So
I've heard about that. And before you get back to Texas, I can't remember what city it was where, and a lot of investors didn't know what to do. Because,
Dallas, probably.
Yeah, it was some big city. And they said all of a sudden they came in with this restriction. And there were some people that bought these expensive condos just for that. And so now they bought these condos probably kind of high because that's still where prices are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in order to make mortgage, the only way you can do or make profit, not just make mortgage, but make profit, is have it as a short-term rental.
Correct.
And so then they came through and like, yeah, you can't do short. So then they couldn't sell it either. So they were stuck with these properties that they don't know what to do with.
Well, there's an injunction now as of December in Dallas, for instance, where the short-term rental owners, got together and sued the city over the ordinance that was supposed to, it went into effect in June, but was going to start getting enforced in December. So they got an injunction against that ordinance. And now it's going to be going back to court apparently in June of this year. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that, see how that affects everything. But knowing, the Texas Death Star law, for instance, is one where, you can't make local laws that contradict state laws, right?
Okay.
And so they call it the Death Star law. And so a lot of when you try to have these local municipalities, they're really being governed then by the state in that sense. So I'm not anticipating a lot of major changes necessarily.
For us, El Paso.
But I do want to say El Paso probably should be prepared to start paying a hot tax, a hotel occupancy tax at some point.
Yeah, I think the more it grows, I think hotels and motels are going to feel slighted, So those are some of the laws that you may want to budget in for, I guess, if you will. Because like you said, we're seeing changes around the country. Mm-hmm. We're seeing changes around the state. Mm-hmm. So eventually the state could actually pass something that would automatically affect El Paso, and there would be no way around it.
Correct.
Okay. So and we talked about really quickly too, the best way to find one, the best way to make it work. What is one of the easiest ones that you have seen, or kind of the easiest way to do this? Because you've seen a lot of people do it, right? Mm-hmm. So I know it's kind of a little secret, kind of a giveaway, but what is, you've got some people that you've been kind of keeping an eye on. What's kind of the easiest way to do this?
To get into
it and make it successful. So
I like to talk about 4 characteristics of a short-term rental that is really important. Location, like I said, Fort Bliss families like to come in, visit, kind of a thing. So northeast, east side is really good. Anything around up to and down 54 in that sense could be really good for families who want to be close to post, and even families who are temporarily moving into town and staying in an Airbnb while they find the one, right? So we see a lot of that too. Other locations would be downtown for the conventions, for the Chihuahuas games, for those kinds of things. We see a lot of places pop up around downtown. We also see some on the west side. But really you don't see much in the 3.5 zip code, 3.6 or
east and
and 1.5, the lower valley, that kind of a thing. When it's too far out from the city center, it's probably not a good short-term rental.
I had actually, this is a little bit of a giveaway, but it's funny. I had actually looked in this area, and you'll know, I can't remember the name of the park, but it's this beautiful park. It's in Central, and it's near 54. Okay. But once you get east of that park, I think the streets are like copper, and you get into like some of those mineral names. And the
Altuda Park.
Yeah, they're pretty affordable, and it's close to 54, so you can get to downtown if you need to. You're gonna go to the ball game. You're gonna go to the convention center. You can get to Northeast if you need to. It's kind of in that sweet spot right there. And again, once you get a little closer to 54, which benefits them, the prices come down a little bit, because obviously once you get back up toward the mountain, the prices go up pretty quick. But you've got kind of a nice little sweet spot area. So access is very important. And so you've got access, obviously, which is location. And what are the other things?
It has to have that special sauce. I like to call it the special sauce, where it's got, an incredible view, or it's got a pool, or it's got an extra, casita or bedroom, something that makes it unique that could, really attract someone who needs that specific item.
Because when you post the pictures, they're gonna see it, and it can't be just your.
Yeah, the people look at it like a vacation, and so they're like, I don't want to stare, into a yard with no landscaping and things like that. They really want to feel like they're on a getaway. So it needs to have a little special feature to it.
And that's why people do this, right? Instead of a hotel, because it's like they don't just want your typical hotel feel. They want like a little bit of a getaway. You know, I've got that convention, but I want to stay at a house while I have to go to the convention for work. So it makes life a little more fun, a little more enjoyable.
The third thing I want to say is, are you pet friendly? Because that's the other reason why people will choose an Airbnb over a hotel necessarily. There are some pet friendly hotels for sure in town, but the majority of them, you know, you want to be able, your pet to go and be free and play around and not kind of be stuck in a room, maybe for a weekend or a week.
And is that the people that are pet friendly? Is it easier or harder? I mean, it's kind of one for the other, just really quickly, because if you're pet friendly, you got to clean it up, right? So is it better to be pet friendly or better not to? I guess it's better to be, right?
It's better to be, you know, on the financial side.
Time.
Yeah. And then that you just work it into your cleaning fee, honestly.
Okay.
So any kind of cleaning that it needs, you know, if you have artificial turf, you know, it's just quick hose it off, that kind of a thing. So make it, you know, I guess pet friendly materials in the house too.
That's smart. Tile it out. Something like that. Yeah. Okay. All right. Good. Well, good. So we got location. We got some other things to make it special. We talked about kind of the way it goes when you need to buy one. So thank you very much. This was short-term rentals. We did kind of touch on briefly, but not into too much detail. It's a whole another basket of worms that we're going to get into. And it's a fun one, actually. It's long-term rentals. So we're going to be talking about that next time. And that is going to be our part 2. Thank you very much, Adrienne Dominguez with AMAR Real Estate Group. She's going to be back for part 2. And again, if you missed any of our past episodes, just go to heatboxtv.com/the-breakdown.